Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching on YouTube. Welcome to the Foundation Day Debate 2020 of IIT Kharagpur. A few weeks back, our Prime Minister urged the citizens and asked them to rally behind this concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the concept of a self-reliant nation. And if we go back several years to the days of our freedom movement, Mahatma Gandhi ji had also talked about the concept of Swavalamban, which also means self-reliance. The dream of a self-reliant nation where the nation takes care of its own needs, where we are not dependent on anybody else, it's really a dream that all of us cherish. But it also brings about the question that in today's world of a global connected economy, is such a concept practically realizable? And I go back to one of my experiences from my own professional life a few years back, at a time when I was working for Intel. And it was a technology that we had developed at Intel India, and which was being commercially adopted in one of the laptop systems of Toshiba, a company from Japan. For this, I worked with Toshiba's ODM. The name of the company was Inventec and headquartered in Taipei in Taiwan. The product, I am told, was manufactured in Inventec's factory in China and was put as in one of the flagship lines at Best Buy, the electronics superstore in USA. So here is an example of a product from a Japanese company which was designed and manufactured by a Taiwanese company, possibly manufactured in China, and was sold in USA, which had a technology which was developed by the research wing of the Indian office of an American multinational. So that brings the question that if we have to really design, manufacture, and sell the world's finest products, is it possible to do so in today's world without leveraging the expertise, competence, and experience from across the world? And I especially mark my words design, build, and sell, because it may be possible to design and make even if we are able to develop that competence. It is important to sell it at an affordable price point. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic for today's debate is the following. In the opinion of the House, Atmanirbhar Bharat will make the journey from a dream to reality. Speaking for the motion today is my faculty colleagues, the faculty team from IIT Kharagpur, Professor Virendra Jaitley from Mechanical Engineering Department, Professor Shobhi Gupta from the Department of Geology and Geophysics, and Professor Jinia Mukherjee from the Department of Humanities and Social Science. They will be speaking for the motion, that is, Atmanirbhar Bharat will make the journey from a dream to reality. Speaking against the motion is our students team, and it's again about girl power. The student participants for today, Ms. Shruti Mahalakshmi, Ms. Simran Rajagopalan, and Ms. Devika Narayanan. I'll just spend a minute on the format of the debate. It consists of 3 rounds. The first round is going to be the conventional debate round, where each of the 6 participants that is going to put forward his or her thoughts and views on the topic, either for or against the motion. The time allotted per participant is 4 minutes. I'll give you an indication at the end of 3 minutes and then a final buzzer at the end of 4 minutes. So please try to stick to your time limit. In round number 2, which we call the rebuttal round, the teams are going to ask questions or direct questions at each other alternately. Okay? And this is going to continue for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to come to the details when we come to the round. The third round is called the jury question and answer round, where we have a panel of pretty eminent jury members today who are going to direct their questions based on what they just heard from the round 1 and round 2 towards the debaters. I'm going to introduce the jury members later when we come to the round, but today I'm just going to mention the names now. Kaushik Roy, dialing in from Bombay, our alumnus from class of 1997. Commander V.K. Jaitley, our distinguished service alumnus, class of 1979. And Professor Shobhi Bhattacharya, dialing in from Pilani, our former Dean Student Affairs and Deputy Director. And finally, at the end of the 3 rounds, we have a panel of judges who are going to evaluate you and finally declare two awards. The first award is the winning team, and the second award is the best speaker. So the judges panel, we are fortunate. It's my great pleasure to introduce the judges for today. Professor Chanda Chakraborty, representing the faculty members, a very senior professor from Department of Humanities and Social Science. Ninad Lohakare, the students representative, and the outgoing Vice President of Technology Students, Gymkhana. And finally, our distinguished alumnus awardee from the class of 1988, Mr. Raj Kamal Jha, Chief Editor, Indian Express, dialing in from Gurgaon. So without further ado, we will get started with round one. I request the first speaker from the faculty team who are going to speak for the motion to go ahead. It would be Professor Vikrant Racharla.
Good afternoon to everyone. Today, the faculty team shall be speaking further. We shall strive to show that the regulatory framework and policy decisions that the government is taking, the spirit of innovations in individual citizens brought out through startups as well as committees, particularly at village level, and democratization of knowledge through proliferation of internet, have the potential to propel us towards a good degree of self-sufficiency in major areas such as energy, defense, services, health, water, sanitation, etc. We shall be looking at data over the last several years to show that self-sufficiency is not really a pipe dream, but could rather become a reality if we stay the path in the coming decade. The aim here is not to isolate ourselves and manage with zero imports, but rather the aim is to grow as a country of problem solvers and have a trade surplus or net zero imports in the coming decade. I myself shall be talking about how startup culture can transform our society and the role we all have to play in it. I had the good fortune of living in several countries, and I realized that every country has a soul and character to it. With France, it was the love of art, culture, beauty, and food. With Japan, it was a strong sense of punctuality, work culture, and nationalism manifested through sale and purchase of only made in Japan goods. With Germany, it was professionalism and rigor. And with US, it was about entrepreneurship. The culture of entrepreneurship was visible in US everywhere. In TV, a large number of ads would be related to new products. My American friends would be constantly thinking about making new products which can overcome mundane problems. And I could see people around me getting a wide variety of jobs, from writing software to control floodlights in stadiums to working as crash investigators. I came to realize after a while that entrepreneurship was deeply ingrained in their culture. The TV glorified the successful entrepreneurs. The kids had been trained in schools and colleges to do hands-on projects and solve real-life problems. The rich, the banks, and the investment firms invested in new startups, and schools and universities were highly supportive. I realized that a large number of businesses in US, totaling to around 30 million, which is about 1 for every 10 citizens, was the reason why the country had so little levels of unemployment and why there were so many exciting products coming out of US. For long, the goal of most parents in India has been that their children study well and get a job. This is changing slowly but surely. Several factors, including sizable population with reasonably large wealth, desire of students to start their own companies, government policies, success stories, and startup support system have created a situation where a lot of people, both young as well as mid-career individuals, to create their own startups. For instance, Aether Energy, which has been created by IIT Madras graduates, has been a very successful electric vehicle company, while Altai Green, a startup which has been created by mid-career individuals, again has been very successful. To see that we have a lot to be optimistic about, we can take a look at some numbers over the last decade. India is currently the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. We have currently about 20,000 startups in the country, many of them looking at solutions to problems in healthcare, education, agriculture, and finance. We have been having a year-on-year growth of 29% in startups. And currently there are about 18 unicorns meaning companies with a valuation of above $1 billion in the country, with a combined wealth valuation of over $72 billion. So as we can see, the startups can create wealth, solve problems, and energize the country. Personally, I am very excited to see and use services of companies such as PhonePe, Swiggy, Ola, etc. However, we all have an important role to play to take the startup scene to the next level, where they can make the country self-reliant and reduce unemployment levels. Education institutions such as ours have a big role to play. We need to provide framework and support for more startups to come up. More percentage of students need to dream of being their own masters and work towards it. Society needs to be more supportive, probably through something like crowdfunding. Parents need to be more supportive of their children who may want to take a few years of their life to pursue their dreams. I am personally hopeful that a lot of exciting startups will come up in the near future and drive our country to prosperity, good health, and Atmanirbharta. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikrant. It's definitely you stressed especially on the culture of startup, which is very important in this journey. I would now request the first speaker from the students team, that is Ms. Shruti Mahalakshmi, to come and put forward her views, and she will be speaking against the motion. I would like to say that this year, normally, traditionally, what has happened is we have chosen topics where we have deliberately, where there's a distinction between which side the students and the faculty are going to be, and we have deliberately tried to swap which side they're going to speak. This year's topic that way is not so black and white, but I think as debaters, we all know that many a times what the debaters, the views that they're putting forward to is not necessarily what they feel is their actual feelings or personal feelings. And that's the skill of a debater, to go against his or her grain and speak convincingly. So we should all remember that. The first speaker from, again, it's my pleasure to invite the first speaker from the students team, Ms. Shruti Mahalakshmi.
Good evening, everyone. So I'll be beginning my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Panel, while a professor did talk about how startup culture will lead to self-sustenance in terms of having trade surplus, whilst also having a globalist economy, while stating examples of different countries, this is exactly the thing that we will tackle in our case, right? We think the proposition team has failed to acknowledge a few trade-offs in this debate, and I'm going to make those clear to you in my speech. If they're pushing for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, which literally means to make in India and have more production in India, it aims at a self-sufficient country, right? In where Indian companies should take over the manufacturing line and have a strong place in the market. This means that Indian companies have to be protected by means of taxing imports, etc., or else there is no way that these companies can sustain. This implies that the utopian scenario of adapting the best of both worlds, like side proposition talks to you about, that is, Atmanirbhar Bharat coexisting with a globalist economy, is unlikely to become a reality. So for Atmanirbhar Bharat to be a reality, India will have to move towards being protectionist. Let us analyze why. Catering to one of the largest customer bases in the world means that India as a country has several unique industries. However, not all of these have pre-existing homegrown companies who can just take over the market and the supply chain. Right now, we have no homegrown company that can cater to the demands of these people in a lot of sectors. For example, the fertilizers in our country, or even the widely used day-to-day products like smartphones, computers, and etc. Hence, for Atmanirbhar Bharat to be successful, we will have to install these new companies from scratch, which is like setting up new startups that Sir talks to you about. And also the country has to be able to cater to its customer base and be self-sufficient via this, right? Note the trade-off your panel. You are literally promoting local companies in the supply chain through financial tariffs on foreign companies, which will obviously impact these foreign companies both in terms of sales and pricing, meaning that the Indian market isn't very conducive for these MNCs anymore. What have I proved to you with this piece of analysis? I have proved to you that Atmanirbhar Bharat and large foreign MNCs cannot coexist. What does this then mean to the debate? This means that the proposition team is supporting a world which has reduced competition in the supply chain to somehow magically improve the homegrown companies versus our world where we make them improve through organic competition, which means that the side proposition should prove to you why this inorganic push will work to a large extent and is sustainable than the sort of organic change that we tell you about. This is the trade-off of the words that you have to compare, panel. Additionally, apart from the competition in the supply chain, what does this mean for the consumers? Firstly, in terms of prices, there is expected to have an increase in the prices of these commodities. Why? Because these newer companies in the industry mean that they have lesser expertise and lower efficiency of their business model, right? For example, just compare the prices of local homegrown toys or cell phone covers to those made in the other nations. The difference is quite large purely because of the fact that our companies do not have similar efficiency and know-how in producing cheaper products. Additionally, a reduction in competition directly disincentivizes companies to reduce prices because they have nowhere else to go, right? The customers. This then means that a lot of people can't afford to buy the same things that they could have otherwise. Not the perspective in which we have to look at the impacts of these increased prices, family. It is very easy for us to come from a position of privilege and say, oh, Chinese products are bad, so let's just ignore them. But the advantages they have for the people who literally live on 2 meals or a basic level of sustenance are huge, right? These products make it affordable for these vulnerable people to have a better quality of life. Like for them to be able to buy a better gift for their kid's birthday, to be able to afford a better camera to capture the memories of their lives, or buy a TV and things like this sort, right? These are the people who will not be able to afford a lot of things that they once used to. And they will have a much worse off life because of this sort of reduction in competition in the market. Now, Devika will further explain to you how it affects common people and why we stand to win in this debate. Besides, we think that the startup incubators can still happen even in our side. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti. I think you brought up 2 good points. My key takeaways is that the self-reliance and globalist economy, it's very difficult for them to coexist. And the other part was about the price point and affordability. 2 very, very pertinent points. So I would now request the next speaker from the faculty team, which is Professor Shoibal Gupta, to speak for the motion. Mr. Gupta.
I think the points that Shruti actually raised are very pertinent, but I think this is one thing. We grew up in a socialist age when our country was actually forced to actually only forcibly prevent foreign competition to Indian goods, and our markets were actually thriving on stuff that we were producing ourselves. The problem with that was that many of the things that we were producing became substandard. There wasn't enough research and development to be competitive. So when ultimately we had to open up to the world, our industries fell apart. Now, I think this is where the present scheme of Atmanirbhar Bharat is not stressing. We seem to have learned, and the Indian administration, not just this government, but even from before that, people have realized that we actually need to create a different sort of self-reliance, not the type of self-reliance we had earlier. So what are we actually doing? I mean, we have to actually create industries, an environment in which our domestic consumers, our domestic manufacturers, they are actually produced to manufacture domestically. And then that can actually be used to market it on a global level through competition. So we have to prove ourselves that way. Now, what I want to say is that what I want to concentrate on in the few minutes I have is that the government has taken very real steps towards actually solving these problems. And there are certain sectors, 3 sectors in particular that I'm going to talk about, 2 in major. One is defense and the other one is energy. And the third one briefly is on electronics, which everybody talks about. Now, let's say defense. This is always a taboo topic from anybody. I mean, if you raise anything about defense, we have to be self-reliant. And what that has meant is that ultimately we've never really been self-reliant. No country in the world is really that self-reliant on defense. Everybody imports. And what we need to do is actually to have a capability so that we cannot, I hate to use the word, be blackmailed into buying certain stuff or being dependent on certain stuff, compromising the security of our nation. So in this way, what has happened since 2014 is that the government has actually set up a defense negative list. Now, this is a list of 101 items, right, which have to be produced domestically over a period of 5 years from 2020 to 2025. So this ban comes in, so it's phased. So 69 items will actually have to be produced domestically by the end of this year, 11 items by the end of 2021, 24 items up to the end of 2024, and it's one item is also left for 2020, December 2025. So by that time, these 101 items will not be imported. Now, this has been done, not just imposed upon by the government, but it's actually been done in consultation with our defense people. And the DRDO has been given instructions that this manufacturing has to start. So this will actually be produced in time so that the army, examples are the armored fighting vehicles that the army uses, submarines that the Navy uses, right? And the LCA that the Air Force is already using, these have to be actually used within a short period of time. That is all that they would have. With respect to the energy sector, so we have coal dependence. 30% of our import bill is dependent on oil and coal. 30% that oil reduction. We have enough investigations and exploration in the oil sector in our country. We have coal is a problem because there are some parts of coal that we have to rely on imports. This is the coking coal. Our homegrown quality is not good enough, and therefore what we have to do is we've actually started now producing more domestic coal for the sectors that do not need to use the industries. For example, the sponge iron industry doesn't actually need high quality coal, so they have to take it from the domestic production. And Coal India has increased its coal production substantially in this period of time. We also have investigations into the productions that we need for electrifying the country. So if you have electric cars, you need lithium. So all these investigations have actually started off. So I think probably almost run out of time. So I'll just have one sentence. I just want to say that we have parts of renewable energy in which the government has invested a lot. But there's one final thing that I will nick from my own Facebook post actually, that ultimately what we are aiming for is that we will do it in India with Indian students in an Indian setup, but not leaving out the rest of the world.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gupta. I think you made the points and you have extensively researched the various sectors and the policies and the steps that the government has taken. So extremely rich in content. I would now request the next speaker from the students team, and that would be Ms. Devika Narayanan, to please come and put forward her views and thoughts. She will be speaking against the motion. Devika, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let's start with a few rebuttals to take down majority of the case that came from their first two speakers, right? Understand the idea of entrepreneurship that was extremely valid that they brought up, right? But we on side opposition think that even in case of entrepreneurship, and even if that is the burden that side government is taking, we think on our side of the house, we can ensure higher scaling up of these startups in itself by ensuring competition in itself, right? What do we mean? We think even if entrepreneurship ventures succeed by having ideas, we think they reach a certain scale when they're pushed due to competition, right? Let's take the example of Flipkart and Snapdeal, which existed in the Indian market, but then Amazon came into the Indian market and then actually completely shook up the market and led to many huge changes in the industry in itself, in terms of delivery times, in terms of how the supply chain worked, and a lot of technology exchange happened and a lot of innovation happened as well, right? We think the point at which these startups are put to a competitive market, we think they have much more incentive to compete and improve and scale up as well, and more on this in my constructors, right? The second point that came to them, again, came from the second speech, again, very valid, is the idea that India is going to be dependent and we need to reduce this dependency on other countries by increasing the trade, by increasing the export surplus, right? We think even this is possible more on our side of the house because there'll be less retaliatory measures on the kind of exports we have to other countries because our soft power in international relations will be better off, right? Expanding both of these ideas in my constructors, right? Panel, understand that what the other team has to prove in this debate is a huge change in the self-reliance of India. They can't get away with taking marginal burden, say as a 2% increase in the manufacturing sector, because we think that would happen even without something as drastic as Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? But rather what they need to prove here is that there will be immediate steps taken to inorganically create self-sufficiency. Understand the alternative to this that our team is proposing is organic growth in these industries by allowing foreign competition. This foreign competition is extremely important, not just to reduce prices, as my first speaker told you, but it also acts as the only major incentive there is for Indian companies to innovate and actually get better. Let's take an example, right? In case of inorganic change that government proposes, a lot of Indian companies will now be protected from competition and have a lot of money pumped in through the funding in the short run. And under this system, they have absolutely no incentive to actually solve issues with their supply chain or to constantly innovate their products, since the Indian consumer is anyway going to choose your brand because there is no foreign competitor, right? Whereas under our alternative of organic growth, these Indian companies will have to compete with other foreign companies and have a direct incentive to either have technological exchange or in order to produce better and cheaper and better quality products, and also optimize their functioning so that they can compete to the best of their abilities in a competitive market. As a second constructive, we on side opposition also think that this policy is going to negatively impact India's soft power, and we don't think India is in a position right now to be able to handle this, right? We think healthy trade relations are a major contributing factor to the kind of soft power India holds in international relations. Let's take an example of an industry that is currently import heavy, like the fertilizer industry, which means India imports almost all their fertilizers from US and China, right? We think if India is going to go ahead and take a protectionist stance in the fertilizer market and then impose restrictions on foreign companies in the fertilizer market, we think India is going to have retaliatory measures on Indian exports as well, and this is going to adversely affect the economy, right? Furthermore, if MNCs move out of the country due to the restrictions on their functioning, we think a lot of people are going to lose jobs as well. Our alternative is relying on what India knows best and doing that to the best of our ability instead of trying to do everything and anything, right? And we think this is a much more efficient solution to solve all of the problems that side government proposes, especially in the post-COVID scenario with India's economy needing urgent revival and millions living in poverty. We think we prioritize the most vulnerable stakeholder in this debate. Very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Devika, and it's very convincingly put and very, very strong points that you put forward in support of your views. I would now request the third speaker from the faculty team, Professor Jinia Mukherjee from the Department of Humanities and Social Science, to place her views and thoughts. She would be speaking for the motion.
Yeah, thank you all, and good evening, everybody. So while my team members have drawn attention to the quantitative data statistics in terms of entrepreneurial and technological aspects, and Devika and Shruti, I think appropriately they talked about, when these communities themselves are marginalized, and when this transition is taking place, then definitely there are some challenges. For example, environmental challenges, social challenges. So the environmental challenges lies in this transition from the organic to the inorganic part. So what I'll try to do here is to share some real life field-based examples from my own phenomenological experiences and encounters from urban, rural, and peri-urban India, building upon qualitative insights and case narratives. So my first example will be from the islanders, the practices that are pursued by islanders who inhabit river islands, in deltaic environments like the river Ganga, or for example, the river Brahmaputra. So for example, in Bengal, there are chors. So these chors are the river islands in the local dialect. And in these chors, so I have been there in the chors, and I found out that how the choruas, they pursue array of, practices relying upon ecosystem services. And these ecosystem services not only enable them to kind of, ensure their own livelihoods and survival, but also to cope against, the different crises that the planet is facing in terms of climate change. So, there are plenty of examples for how they use the geol tree, for example, which is a storm-resistant tree, to make their own houses. So you can actually learn a lot of lessons from these practices. And the transnational agencies like IUCN, like DFID, now they are investing a lot to kind of focus on these community environment intersections. And most importantly, I would like to highlight that the national government now is incorporating these practices in its national disaster management plans and adaptation policies. So the second example, I would again be drawing from coastal India. So I would like to say that out of 60 million hectares of land from Southeast and South Asia, 3 million hectares of land from Orissa and West Bengal alone get affected by salinity. So for example, just think about the Indian Sundarbans. And here what happens is that in the last few years, so in 2009, Sundarbans was struck with the cyclonic storm, super cyclonic storm Aila, followed by Bulbul last year, and now Amphan in midst of the pandemic, COVID. So what happened is that this land, the agricultural land, remains submerged under saline water. So now what Indian Institute, National Institute have done, for example, Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, along with NDEV and some other scientists, they tried to adapt some new farming techniques, learning from our past, reviving the traditional agricultural practices and then giving it back to the farmers. So this is social innovation where, the community, the scientists, national institutes and departments have come together to kind of revive, this economy. And CSSRI has now developed 120 varieties of, salt-tolerant rice varieties. And out of which is 40 salt-tolerant seed varieties are of very high resistance. So the final example I would quickly like to provide is from the peri-urban wetlands of Kolkata, East Kolkata wetlands, which recycles 750 million liters of waste and generates 150 tons of vegetables and 22 tons of fish per day. And it ensures it ensures a livelihood of 1.5 lakh people residing there. And so this can be one of the best examples because Kolkata till date has no separate sewage treatment plant. And everything is happening, in terms of cooperation and collaboration among the KMC, Kolkata Municipal Corporation, Irrigation Waterways Department, and the communities themselves. So the final argument that I would like to make is that the contemporary pathway for India lies in Atmanirbharata. And I think the inherent message is not self-development, but how we can optimize by harnessing our collective resilience across the cooperation of plural actors involving NGOs, grassroots organizations, and government to ensure Atmanirbharata and give the best benefits through the internalization and implementation of the concept.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mukherjee. I think you brought out through some very nice field examples, the kind of talent that we already have and which we need to tap in as we march towards our goal of self-reliance. Finally, the last speaker for round one is our final speaker from the students team, and that is going to be Ms. Simran Rajagopal. Simran, the stage, Rajagopalan, sorry. Simran, the stage is yours.
Panel Atmanirbhar Bharat aims to reach a self-sufficient India in all industries, not just the service sector like government spoke about in terms of startups, right? Startup incubators can happen even on our side, and it is improved with the kind of competition we provide. It's not just about Swiggy and the service sector, but also self-sufficiency in manufacturing. And moreover, the inputs that we get as a country, right? The raw materials and the kind of things we import, which may not be geographically available here, right? The entire opposition has spoke about very limited sectors like defense, energy, or niche markets like local flooding and how to deal with such problems, right? We believe this natural shift in sectors like defense is going to happen on either side, right? But on their side of the house, they've reduced the chances of export and will be unable to get the balance of becoming a globalized and exporting sector in itself, which they themselves talk about, right? Them talking about local village industry is very niche, and while that happens in that region only, right, because it won't meet the diversified needs and demands of our entire country. Local flooding has had Indian solutions for decades. And these niche markets already have a demand and aren't under threat even in a globalized economy because it is specialized and the people over there know the technicalities firsthand in itself, right? For them to win or have any chance of winning this debate, they have to prove the reality of self-sufficient Atmanirbhar India in every industry is realistic with the protectionist stance that they have taken, right? So any constructive the other team brings, they have to do two things. Firstly, they have to show you a drastic change in growth in these industries because that's what the motion is about. And moreover, they have to consider implementation and whether this is actually feasible and scalable, right? In 2014, the government introduced Make in India initiative and immediately investment commitments worth crores were announced. But let's understand why Make in India failed, right? 3 reasons. First, it set out for too ambitious growth rates for the manufacturing sector to achieve. Historically, India has not achieved it, and to expectable capacities of such was such a huge overestimation of the implementation capacity of our country, right? Secondly, the initiative brought in too many sectors into its fold. This led to a loss of policy focus, taking away the comparative advantages of the domestic economy and international trade. It failed to acknowledge that certain states or countries have a better understanding of certain sectors. The comparative advantage is what makes international trade and even the domestic sector a lot better because you focus on the fields you have an expertise in, right? And thirdly, given the uncertainties of the global economy, the initiative was spectacularly ill-timed. Notice how all 3 of these problems still occur in Atmanirbhar Bharat, as we have shown to you in all 3 of our speeches. It is too ambitious, spectacularly ill-timed with the disarray COVID has left us in, and has brought too many sectors into its fold. Panel, note that everything in government side is working in a utopia which has failed earlier. Talking about an idealistic change in isolation is not what this debate is about. It is about whether Atmanirbhar can actually and realistically achieve the change right now and whether it can help our people who are in the most vulnerable situation. The COVID pandemic has left millions of people without jobs, struggling to find a source of income to make it through the next few months. From the migrant workers to the middle class, they simply cannot afford to pay more than they currently do for goods and services they need, right? On their comparative on their side is that the producers may not be able to absorb the higher cost of production, which will shift the burden onto the consumers who face higher prices for regular commodities such as mobile phones, automobiles, or electronic goods, as even foreign goods have tariffs on their side, right? We've told you how besides this higher cost, this can lead to a lot of Indian population losing their job, both as a consumer and as an employee. The citizens of our own country, who are the most important stakeholders, are worse off, right? For a panel, to being an open as an importer is a prerequisite for becoming a successful exporter. For India to grow, they need to open imports so that we can then export the products we ourselves create. By showing you the lack of implementation ability in the Gov's model and taking into consideration our own citizens, the suffering citizens of our country, we stand for a more sustainable and organic model than the change and inorganic change the proposition is pushing for.
Thank you, Simran. A very passionate delivery. And that brings us all to the end of the round 1. We have listened to all the 6 speakers. And all of them, I must say, the speeches were all very enlightening. And I definitely learned a lot from all of you. Thank you very much. That brings us to round number 2, which is the rebuttal round. So rebuttal is the 2 teams are going to direct questions at each other. This is going to go on for about 15 minutes. So it would go alternative. It would go alternately in the sense that the faculty team is first going to ask the students team, then the students team asks a question to the faculty team. Just because the students are at different locations, this year the format, as we discussed before, is that the teams are requested to direct the questions to a particular member of the opposing team and give him or her the first chance to respond. But of course, the teammates can add on to the response. Try to keep your questions and answers both short, focused, and crisp. Any long, convoluted answers are going to be viewed as time-wasting tactics, and that's going to be penalized. Okay. Normally, what I've seen is within 15 minutes, it's possible to cover 8 to 10 questions. So let us start the rebuttal round first. The first question goes from the faculty team to the student team.
Right. See, if I look at some of the main points which all three of you have raised. So one was that you said that we said that import should be banned. At no point of time did we state that. In fact, the first statement that I started with was to say that the idea is not really to ban the imports. The idea is to become a country of problem solvers and raise to a level where we become a net exporter. That is, our exports are actually bigger than the imports. So we are not trying to stop the imports. The second point is you have been focusing on this aspect of organic growth. Now, one thing you need to understand is that the government is not really in the business of starting businesses. Fine, you have public sector companies which offer some services, but the government doesn't directly produce things. So what it really does is lays framework, and framework is of two types. The framework can either be positive in nature, where it incentivizes companies which want to come and set up manufacturing plants or service sector plants over here. So things like SEZs, manufacturing zones come under that. And then it sometimes sometimes it charges highest tariff in order to protect the basic people. Why do you think that the government is going to act in some sort of a uniform manner for all the sectors, from ballistic missiles to dairy products to electronic products? In the end, they have to ensure that the people are happy. If people are not happy, they are not going to come back for the next term. So why do you always think that the government is going to use some sort of a protectionist measure where it will not allow, for example, import of Chinese electronic goods or fertilizers or something like that? It is most natural that what it is trying to do is provide incentives, and it is giving a hint to all its establishments, including something like IIT, that please try to encourage the growth of our own firms within the country. It's not really trying to look at it in a negative sense, that stop others from coming inside and then we'll try to do something by ourselves. So why do you really think that the government is going to uniformly try to ban all the imports and then just make do with whatever we have within the country?
Is it Devika who is going to respond to that? Well, it seems we have lost.
Sorry,
Yes.
there's some problem with her internet connection.
Yeah.
So I'll start the answer and then she'll add on once her internet works. So the reason we believe that MNCs and a globalized world cannot coexist together in itself with the Atmanirbhar Bharat that we aim for is because a lot of the companies within our country are growing in itself, right? When they have to compete with these MNCs who have a lot more resources and a lot more expertise within their respective field, the MNCs are naturally going to have lower costs and lower prices for their products, right? At the point at which that these global firms have lower price and a brand value associated with them, the consumers within our country are more likely to buy products from these MNCs compared to buying products that are made in India, right? Because the products made in India are going to be more expensive because of the fact that they're just growing industries and don't have economies of scale that the foreign companies do have within themselves. And moreover, these Indian companies still have to establish themselves into knowing exactly what the customer needs and be able to cater their products accordingly, right? So the point at which these products are going to be at a higher price, the only way you can incentivize the consumers within our country, which are our citizens, to go ahead and still buy these Make in India products. Remember, we're talking about people who still struggle to earn money and aren't in a privilege to have a choice between the products they have. So for these people, they will naturally shift towards the cheaper products. So the only way with which you can grow these industries locally within India and reach that kind of scale while ensuring that sales happen, not just grow the industry and have people continue buying foreign products, right? So if you want those sales to happen, you have to take away these foreign products either through imposing tariffs on them or not letting them enter the country in the first place, right? We believe for contradictory reasons, globalist India cannot go together with Atmanirbhar, which is why I think if Devika will add more. Devika?
Furthermore, we think the idea that we're pushing for that Atmanirbhar Bharat is an inorganic change and not an organic change is a fair burden for us to push, right? Why? Because we think all of the kind of movements that Professor talked about in his question happens even without Atmanirbhar Bharat and has been happening, right? In terms of us moving towards more entrepreneurship or in terms of IITs thinking and bright minds coming up and having ideas out there, right? But we think the reason why this motion is worded as so is because Atmanirbhar Bharat is an inorganic step in order to give a push for these industries in itself. Right? We told you that we think organic change still exists on our side of the house and on our side of the house, and that in itself is more sustainable because of all of the reasons Simran told you.
Okay. I would now request the students team to direct their questions at faculty. Just one, again, I want to repeat that please keep your questions and answers short and crisp. This round is for 15 minutes and we have already covered 6 out of those 15. Next question, please, from the student team to the faculty members.
Yes, Professor, India's delivery chain was completely revolutionized after Amazon entered the space due to competition forcing existing companies like Flipkart and Snapdeal to be innovative. How is this natural incentivization going to happen on your side of the house when these companies are fairly protected and don't have to worry about foreign competition in the market?
Was the question audible?
Yeah, sort of. I think they've got the gist.
Should we repeat it? Because the voice was not clear for some people. Okay. Yeah. So 1 minute. The question we're asking is India's delivery chain was completely revolutionized after Amazon entered the space due to the competition forcing existing companies like Flipkart and Snapdeal to be innovative. How is this natural incentivization of working to improving your supply chain going to happen under your side when they do not have the same levels of competition they face?
I think you're concentrating. It's perfectly understandable from your generation's point of view. You're looking at Amazon and Flipkart and all the service sectors that you're talking about. But that's not what the main majority of our country actually thrive on. You need manufacturing, you need produce. You're looking at something that is making more goods delivery to your house faster. But that's not the majority of the country is not actually surviving through that. What we are talking about is that we should have a setup in which we can promote competition in such a way in the domestic sector that it becomes competitive. In fact, that is exactly what has happened in the US. That is what has happened in Japan, that they had domestic industries which competed with each other. I think our country today realizes where it went wrong with the socialist principles in the past. You had monopolization. This is not being encouraged here. It is being forced to, even the defense sector is being forced to corporatize. So it means that you actually have domestic competition. Once you have competition, immediately it arises. Then you say, I'll give you concrete examples. The automobile section. I grew up for 35 years watching only an ambassador car. I hadn't seen another car in my life. And now once competition has entered, initially once it came in, it was not just imports. Now we are doing things internally. There are competition between different automobile industries producing different kinds of cars, and the improvement is coming about. And Mahindra is now exporting abroad. So these are just parts of things. It doesn't mean we are reinterpreting self-reliance in Atmanirbhar Bharat in a completely different context. We are not eliminating competition. We are making the domestic market more competitive. I think this essence has to be understood.
Yeah. So one point I would like to add is, so when you're talking about, let's say, competition between Indian and foreign companies, let's take again another example, like something like batteries. Okay. So you have an already established supply chain in China. So if you are going to import from China, the price of the cells is always going to be less. Now, but then battery is going to become a very big business and India doesn't want to be left out. So what is the option that the government has? The option that the government has that it is going to incentivize people who want to set up the manufacturing plants. But once the plant has been set up, then you have an open market system. Then they are going to compete with others. It is just that if you have your own child, you are going to care for them more. but it doesn't really mean that you're going to hit the other kid. So it's something like that. So the government is trying to give a push to Indian industries through tax rebates, incentives, to sort of set up plans in areas where we are weak.
Yeah, thank you. Next question from the faculty team to the student team, please.
Right. I have a question basically for Deepika, and there are 2 points in the. I think roughly all three of you had the same points. I didn't get much content out of it. I'm just sorry to say this, but there wasn't much material in it. So what you were saying is a rebuttal. Essentially, what each of you said is a rebuttal of what each of us said. The content of what I'm trying to ask is, the main thing that I got out of Devika were 2 important points, where I think the only ones that I can really make sense of. But what it brought out is this fear of retaliation. So you're afraid that if we stop globalization, then these guys are going to retaliate. It is precisely for that reason that we need to have a domestic dependence, that nobody can blackmail us in that terms, right? Just by saying that we'll stop your goods, we won't send you medicines if you don't do this. This is something that we have to rely on. The other thing is that the COVID pandemic has actually forced us to realize this. It's not even an enforced blockage of goods from outside. People are just frightened to use goods from outside. What do you use then? You have to have local supplies. Suppose, we had to import the bread locally from outside. How would you survive? You have to have local parts. What has happened is that if you increase globalization to such an extent that you kill off the corner shop, Europe is realizing this now, that they have all these big supermarkets which killed off the corner shops, and now the supermarkets close down, they're left without a corner shop to bank on. They have to travel long distance to get just basic stuff. So there is a danger to this. The second thing I want to ask you, what is your counter? That just the fear of retaliation is not going to help. And the second thing you argue is that if there are no incentives, then there'll be no competition. Why not? You split the market. That is exactly what commercial markets do. You split the domestic market. As I said, Atmanirbharta means that you allow domestic companies to be competitive. That is the aim of the companies. What we are not trying to advocate is that you monopolize. That was the mistake we made earlier. That is the mistake that we are not going to repeat. How do you reinterpret this? And how do you argue that this is a bad thing?
Sir, first I'll answer your second question about why external competition itself is important if you claim that internal competition will happen, right? We think, firstly, the kind of diversity that external competition brings is something that cannot be ignored in this debate, right? We think a lot of Indian companies will be in similar levels of innovation, similar levels of technological expertise, and similar levels of scalability as well, right? The point at which an external big player comes into the market is when technological exchange happens, or is when diversity of manufacturing conditions happen, because different countries have different resources that they are rich in and have different levels of expertise in different areas, right? And all of this diversity comes only when there is external competition and doesn't come when there's internal competition, right? But secondly, the idea that we think even if organic growth is not going to happen, which we think it does, even if that is what government is pushing for, we think purely by the theory of comparative advantage, we think what is going to be more efficient for India to do is specialize in the things specialize in the things you're good at, and export more of that, right? Whatever side government is pushing for is in severe jeopardy when you think that the world countries don't exist in vacuum, right? They have relations with each other, and retaliatory measures are going to happen if you block out entire countries from going ahead and investing in your country, right? And we think this is a very realistic stance for us to take, because we think the point at which you have an existing foreign player, but you say in every level of the supply chain, we are going to prioritize Indian companies and we are going to take away the advantages you previously had. We think it is fair for us to say that a lot of these companies will now not be so happy, that a lot of these countries will not be so happy, and the trade surplus that side government is pushing for will be very hard for India to achieve if there is these retaliatory measures on our exports as well.
I would also like to add on that a lot of the competition comes from knowing the innovations that happen abroad, right? So when Tesla goes ahead and makes electric vehicles, Mahindra's also push towards innovating that, because they know otherwise Tesla could come into India and take over market share, right? So the point at which you have the threat of more companies, your innovation increases drastically, which helps for better competition within the country compared to within the country competition, which everyone's on a similar scale, because all industries are starting up from scratch and neither have the kind of technical expertise that Tesla brings in with competition.
I think we have, time is already up for this, but just to have even number of questions from both sides, I would allow one more question to be asked by the student team to the faculty team. Again, once again, the request is to keep both the question and the answer short and crisp.
So yeah, I'll be asking the question. All right. So the manufacturing growth has reduced with policies like Make in India. And like, what do you think is the difference between Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat? And why do you think like Atmanirbhar Bharat is in a position to succeed, even in the case of manufacturing sectors which have retaliated like previously in schemes like Make in India that we've spoken about, especially right now when the public perception is that Make in India has failed and all the startups they pumped money into like didn't make it big?
The one mistake which we all make when we are talking about these things is we speak in third person, meaning somebody is going to manufacture or somebody is doing it and they're doing it wrong and all of that. The point is, okay, we are all in it together. Now, manufacturing, when you say, how can India get into this self-reliance in manufacturing when it has not happened over all these years? Now, that is where we all come into play, you and us. If you look at the next generation of products, the next generation of products are going to implement something like Internet of Things, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And then by putting these things into a product, you are going to greatly increase the value of a product. So if you are going to buy a regular ceiling fan for 300 rupees, now if you can control that with your mobile, you are going to pay another 300 rupees for that particular fan. So we will have to reinvent ourselves about how the manufacturing industry must grow as we move forward. So my point is that the way you change the country is you have a vision. So in this case, the vision is in terms of growing ourselves, in terms of overall output, and get to a stage where, as I was saying earlier, where we have some sort of a net trade surplus, not really to, yeah.
Can I make one point? Just one small point. Actually, you talked about how stopping or having indigenous production this way, I mean, it will actually ruin domestic, it will not make our industries competitive. Just a small example from the past, and this is quite some time back. There was a time when the Cray supercomputer was not being allowed by the US government into the Indian market because they thought it might be misused for weaponry. And what it did ultimately is that India developed Param and Paras, I think, immediately at that time. Later on, Cray had a huge row with the US government protesting that it's because of you we now have competition. We never had this before. If you had allowed us to enter the Indian market and supply it to them. We did it because we needed to do so. So the electric car that you talked about, Tesla, was made because they know that petrol, won't last forever. It's polluting, so we need an alternative. When we need an alternative, we'll be forced to do it. It's better to be prepared. That's why we need to be Atmanirbhar.
Thank you, all the speakers and all the participants. It was a very engaging round and lots of questions going back and forth. So this brings us to the next round, which is the final round of called the jury question and answer. The jury Q&A in this round, the questions will be asked by our jury members. And we have a very eminent panel of members today, and it's my great pleasure to introduce them. First, we have Mr. Kaushik Roy, who is the country head of Weatherford, India and Sri Lanka. He has been my friend for the last 27 years, my batchmate from here. And during our days, he was the undisputed debate champion, 4 Springfest titles in a row. And he only spent 4 years here, so that's 100% strike rate. So today we are very fortunate to have him back to an to the Foundation Day debate, which in our times used to be the Open IIT debate. So that way this event is familiar to him. The format has changed, and of course his seat has changed today as a member of the jury. Next, we have Commander Virendra Jaitley. We fondly call him Jaitley Saab. Jaitley Saab is also our very eminent alumnus from the class of 1979. He has been an ex-serviceman and After his retirement from Navy, he has been a management guru, and he also has a pretty celebrated book that he has authored. And he has done tremendous service for the Institute since his graduation in various capacities, for which he has been bestowed with the Distinguished Service Award of IIT Kharagpur. So again, it's a great pleasure to have him today. He's dialing in from Delhi. And last but not the least, we have Professor Shobhi Bhattacharya. Is presently the Vice Chancellor of BITS Pilani, an extremely busy person, and it's our great fortune that he could find time to do this for us. He is also our very own. He is a KGPN by all means, in and out. He has been the former Dean of Students Affairs, and under whose tenure the Institute, especially student life, saw many significant changes. And later on, he was also the Deputy Director of the Institute from 2013 to 16. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very eminent panel of jury, and now they are going to ask the tough questions to the 6 debaters. Okay, so the format is going to be 5 minutes per jury member to start with. The total round will be 20 minutes. So the last 5 minutes will be buffer time. So I would request Kaushik to go ahead with his questions first.
And it's an honor to be here. Please don't believe a word Anandaroop said. He's mastered the art of embarrassing me in public. But anyway, so my first question would be to Dr. Shoibal Gupta from the proposition. So, sir, I completely agree with you. You've totally hit the nail on the head where you said that for India to realize its Atmanirbhar dream and make it a reality, we have to augment manufacturing, and not just incrementally. We've got to completely overhaul it, and India needs to become the factory of the world, and that's something I completely agree with. Now, my specific question to you is, for this to happen, it will require humongous amounts of capital, because anything like this, a change, a structural overhaul like this, is very capital intensive. The specific question is, where will the capital come from, given the fact that today foreign capital does not want to touch India, because as Mr. Uday Kotak famously said, it's the roti issue, the return on time invested. Foreign capital is extremely wary of the bureaucratic processes in India, the multiplicity of approvals, the red tape, etc. So it's not looking very good on the foreign capital front. Indian capital, if you look at the banking sector today, it's already very fragile. You look at the NPAs, it does not inspire any confidence. So my question to you is, for this to become a reality, where will the capital come from?
Frankly, don't have an answer perfectly to, but there are things that circumstances actually force us into. As for saying that the banks are fragile, I completely agree with that. But I also think that there is quite a bit of Indian capital available with Indian industrialists. So I think that should be the starting point. At no point have we set timelines immediately for saying that this we have to do this by the end of today. Politicians announce that all the time. But I think it's the overall objective, the overall direction, and it cuts across governments. It's not just this one. It's the ones even before this, right? Even the UPA government more or less started off this trend. So the manufacturing thing, I mean, it's been the foreign capital not wanting to touch India is fairly it's something that was a legacy of the past. It was something that they were looking to do because they needed restructuring of the bureaucratic setup to make the red tapeism to go away. The main problem to removing that red tapeism is not actually from outside the country, it's from within the country. And that is the part which this government apparently is trying to do. I say apparently because I don't know exact what measures they are taking. There are objections from within the country, who actually say that you must have protection, you must protect and not allow foreign companies to come in. The capital has to come in, and the whole economy is being restructured that way. As for the domestic consumption, I think there are two parts here. One is the large-scale manufacturing, which you're talking about, which really is capital-intensive. But there is another part, which is the cottage industries, which don't require that much capital. But efficient marketing can generate a lot of capital. Now, I think it has to be one drop growing into larger drops as you go on. So it has to be done on 2 or 3 scales. I'm not a money man. What I do is I find things that the country can make money out of. I'm a geologist. And I think looking at the geology sector, is that we're finding more and more things every day. The Geological Survey has been finding enormous amounts of resources in the time when they've been given given a sort of mandate to do it quickly. And these things are coming out. I think we've underexplored because we've never actually been forced to do it before. We just relied on soft external support. And that is what we're trying to avoid.
Okay, Kaushik, you can go ahead with the next question.
All right. So the next question would be to Simran. And Simran, in the course of your very passionate speech, I heard you mention on 3 separate occasions this word or this phrase, spectacularly ill-timed. And I think you were referring to the fact that given the state of the pandemic, the government's vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat is spectacularly ill-timed. So my question to you is, I'm sure you would agree that the pandemic and whatever destruction it has brought, it pales in comparison when you look at what happened in Hiroshima, or when you look at what happened in World War I and World War II. However, from the ashes of Hiroshima rose a Japan that not only became the world's second largest economy in a couple of decades, it came to epitomize excellence. And from the ashes of the World War, you actually had the 2 industrial revolutions which propelled Europe to the dominant position that they enjoyed in the world for so long. So why do you believe this is so spectacularly ill-timed for India to realize its vision if Japan and Europe could do it in the face of odds that I would say were 10 times worse?
So there are 2 points I'd like to reply in response to that. So firstly is that pandemic has caused a lot of people to lose their jobs entirely, right? If there's so much money in the government, we're unsure whether overhauling a manufacturing sector, like you asked the other side already, will actually bring about the jobs and the kind of money people need for their consumer spending to actually be able to live and sustain a life, especially at this point of time where they don't have jobs, neither do they have money, they don't have any disposable income to go ahead and purchase goods in itself, right? Even when Make in India was introduced, the manufacturing sector composed of 15% of the GDP, and despite all the focus on all the money going there, it's actually reduced to 14% of the GDP last year. So there's actually been a reduction of the percentage which manufacturing makes up. So when there's such a high risk involved in putting so much funds and not necessarily reaping the benefits of that right now, by the time you reap these benefits, which may or may not happen in many years, we believe by then it's too far for the people of our country who are suffering right now in wake of this pandemic, right? And secondly, we believe at the point of time Japan and Europe had the Industrial Revolution, the global ties were not as integrated as they are right now, right? Right now, you have a lot of cost cutting in terms of I buy my input from a place where that natural input is in a lot of abundance, so I get it for cheap, right? So using stuff like the comparative advantage that different countries have has become a lot more important in today's day and age, when there is a much more globalized supply chain where you can actually get goods for a lot cheaper, which actually compete with your local goods, which earlier the trade relations between countries and the transfer of goods from one country to another were not as much as they are right now, which is why we believe like right now in this globalized world, India is competing with every MNC that exists in the rest of the world as well, right? So which is why mainly in the wake of helping these people in right now with this money, with more immediate relief funds rather than a long-term change that might or might not happen. We believe it's a very urgent change that needs to be made.
Okay. Thank you, Simran. I would next request, can I request Professor Shobhi Bhattacharya to continue with his questions?
Sure. Thank you. Professor Jinia Mukherjee, your example, I would say, is truly local. I felt the word you used, the example you gave, is the example itself is an island by itself. The kind of products you mentioned, I believe we are already self-reliant in this country. Okay, I switched to manufacturing, and if you prefer somebody else can respond to it, I'm fine with that. So India should attain trade surplus. All of you have substantiated that very well. We should also sustain growth in export as well to get there, and look for new areas of export, like where we are strong, right? But naturally today, compared to 50 years back, service sector is dominant in this country if you look at the percent of GDP and so on. And even among the startups, I would say. So manufacturing got tapered significantly over the years and I would say decades now. So we can't afford to lose manufacturing sector where it's currently strong. I'll give you an example. Companies are actively looking to diversify the supply chains because of this global China tensions, etc. Has India gained significantly out of that scenario, which was the expectation? I'm afraid not. The current studies say that Vietnam remains the most favored destination, followed by Cambodia, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Thailand. India hasn't really picked it up. India imported about 70% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, they're called APIs, from China. That's the backbone of India's pharmaceutical industry, which is something India is very good at. India is exporting heavily in that, as well as domestic supply. So how do you counter this argument? These are very core issues that's going to plague India if you're going to go into a shell, and particularly the China-specific issues. I do have more examples, but let me just stop here. Please go ahead.
I mean, I absolutely agree with the points that you raised. But what I would like to highlight on is the very fact, again, local. So, for example, when Simran said local, it sounded to be quite less, it sounded to be insignificant and also powerless. But what I would like to say is that I would not provide, manufacturing data or statistics. Maybe Vikrant sir or Shobhi sir can comment on it if they want. But what I would like to say is that, Atmanirbharta, one needs to understand, it is not a product or neither it is an outcome on which we have to, rely a lot. It's mainly a process. So what I want to highlight is that there is a whole lot of interconnections between self-sufficiency and surplus. So one quick point would be like when we are thinking about development, when we are using the term or when we are conceptualizing development and when we are giving a lot of examples about these GDP and GNP and things like that. So if you see the welfare economics literature, people like Amartya Sen, people like Omio Bakchi, they try to come up with a human development index where they focus a lot on education and local innovative farming strategies, nutrition, well-being, and now even happiness and other things which are so-called known as software variables. These are getting incorporated in the umbrella concept of development. So what I want to say is that even within this particular context of the pandemic, COVID-19, so there are a whole lot of issues about would India be able to sustain, what about manufacturing, but what we want to really understand is that it is important for us to tap and to optimize from the existing potentials that is already there in different corners of this country. So on one side, we can look into or access these robust data sets that are there. But on the other hand, it's also important for us to go to the field, to look into the, these field scenarios and see what is actually going on in different pockets. And honestly, this cognitive apathy has to be critically interrogated and countered. And we have to draw a lot of lessons from, this bottom-up needs-driven initiatives. So if we can really, incorporate these needs-driven practices, initiatives, and schemes in the larger set of ideas, I think India has a whole lot of scope, to become self-reliant by, building upon the self-reliance of its heterogeneous communities.
So you can go ahead with your next question.
Okay, Dr. Bhattacharya, am I allowed to ask the faculty team again another question, or it has to be to the students?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So let me come back to, because I wanted to hear one of the other two members of the faculty team. So let me come to the next example. Again, I'm harping on the same issue that we need to develop new export areas, and where, because this move of the self-reliance is going to prune some of the, and we need to make more export earnings and all that. So education, higher education maybe, or even other sectors of education. So that's a new export area for India, because India hasn't done well. India hasn't exported education well, meaning overseas individuals coming and studying in India with us. India is missing a huge export opportunity there, even compared to countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on and so forth. That's a huge gap. Even if you look at brand strength, IITs, of course, IITs have done pathetically, in terms of attracting overseas students, whereas much less, endowed institutes in some of the other countries, they're, reaping huge benefits out of foreign students. If you look at India has 0.3 lakh international students in its universities roughly, and that's actually a drop from previous year. Instead of a growth, we are having drops. And China has about 4.5 lakh, 0.3 lakh versus 4.5 lakh. Look at these numbers, and China has a growth of about 10%. I'm just citing these numbers to tell you the story. You probably are aware of the best research collaboration, international research collaboration in India happening is between Monash and IIT Bombay. You know the Monash IIT Academy, about, I don't know, some 350 or 400 PhD students, etc. But that's not the end of the story. Out of the total number, almost an insignificant, negligible fraction, I think it's about 10 students or something, is inbound. All of it is outbound, meaning Indian students of IIT Bombay going to Monash. So you see the pattern. We haven't done well at all. How do you develop these areas? Because this is going to be necessary for us to be strong in that kind of, I fully agree with some of the arguments that you guys have mentioned, but we need to create these niche areas and make more money so that the trade balance is intact. Do I need to pick a responder, or you go ahead?
No, you can. Any one of you can respond.
Sure. I actually have a last line, if I may just say that. A lot of people are talking about it. Where is this enormous hope coming from? And if you quote Francis Bacon, hope is a good breakfast, but a bad supper.
You have lunch in between.
Okay, so
Okay, the more serious answer now.
I see multiple questions in whatever you have spoken. So I'll try to tackle things one by one. I'll also pick up a point which you had raised earlier. So I'll first start with this aspect of manufacturing and then how we can actually take it forward. So you had correctly pointed out that we have to change the paradigm of manufacturing. And moving forward, we need to integrate what we are really good at, which is math, analysis, software, along with hardware in order to make products which are really good even on global scale. I can give you an example over there. So in recent times, I have been working on electric vehicles. And recently I have come across a startup called Ion Energy. So what they do is make these battery management systems which go into vehicles. Now over there, the products that they make, a unit price costs about 10,000 rupees. The hardware cost is actually only about 1,500 to 2,000 rupees if you compare it with the products from, let's say, China. But what they're really charging for is the hardware software integration and the kind of analytics intelligence that they put in and some sort of a connectedness across the devices. So moving forward, manufacturing can pick up in India by adding these software and analytics on top of hardware. That is something that we can do. Now, coming to your educational question as to how do we really sort of make ourselves known out in the world, how do we have people come over here? So I see two things over here. One is a policy decision that Indian government wants to show to the country that as long as there is willingness from people of the country to come and occupy seats over here, it will not allow the foreign students to come in. So unless there is some sort of a major policy decision where some seats are actually left for the foreign students, changing this number only based on research students coming over here is going to be a challenge. So I see that particularly at the undergrad level, some sort of a policy change can immediately bring in quite a number of students, if not from US and Europe, but we'll still have a lot of international students coming in and studying over here. Now, second question of how do you make the best in the world to come over here and then collaborate with us? So for that, what I see is if you take up really challenging problems which make sense all over the world, if you're willing to invest into it and work in a collaborative manner within the country, then I see that in such sort of instances, even foreigners are really interested in coming in and taking part, whether it is related to nuclear industry, related to railways, or any other sector. I can give you an example over here too. So, for example, so when I was in Japan, so I would see that their industries are very closed. They would not allow the Japanese universities to really come instrument their vehicles and do some sort of independent instrumentation. But over here, because we are an upcoming, we have a lot of upcoming industries, our railways is much more compliant and they would let universities participate in ongoing projects. Now, it is in these kind of areas where the foreigners do show a lot of interest, because that is something they cannot do in their country, but we provide them some sort of an access. So these two ways we can increase our impact.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so a very quick point, I mean, quick add-on on this. So I know that the impact is not large, but the impact is deep. So, sir, you gave the example of this IIT Bombay and Monash collaboration. And I think IIT KTP also has a lot of collaboration with different other foreign universities. And the foreign students, they're very much interested in our fields, I guess. And every year we are having like field school, we are having different outreach programs in different interesting, environments like Chilika, like Sundarbans, like even in the mountains. So we also have like EC mode as partner. So I think, this is an area where we really need to think a lot, package it in the best possible manner. And the institutes can also generate and also already are generating a lot of revenue out of it. And many PhD researchers, they are very much interested to come here and do their research because this country is so diverse. So I think there is a whole lot of scope in terms of higher educational research and also in terms of field school and outreach activities.
Yeah, thank you. I think that brings us to the last member of the jury, which is Commander V.K. Jaitley. I would just like to mention here that we are just 10 minutes away from the end time. Maybe we can exceed by a few minutes, but not more, because we have another event coming up at 6:30. So maybe I would request the panel of the judges to maybe start some thoughts on the final judgment, while the last part of round 3, which are questions from Commander V.K. Jaitley, is in progress. Jaitley sir, the stage is yours. Your mic is muted. Commander V.K. Jaitley, your mic is muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First, congratulations to all the 6 speakers, and I'm going to ask questions to each one of you. So be crisp in your replies, please. First question to Simran. You said our products are going to be costlier and we will not be able to compete globally. I want to just remind you, our ventilators and masks and PPEs, we were not manufacturing at all in India till March 2020. Today, we have started exporting all the 3. How do you justify that? We can do wonders.
So a lot of extreme situations do push for innovation, like happened in this situation. But even in this case, we had a lot of technical support from countries abroad where they actually told us how to go about doing it, right? Because they had established industries, because the situation the pandemic pushed everyone into led to people being more open with the way they can actually go ahead and bring about change within their country. So the way to make masks or the way to make ventilators was something we got from countries abroad, and that kind of technical comparative advantages and sharing technical expertise is what helped us in this situation.
Anyway, there's a chap in Gujarat who made totally indigenously masks, totally from what he was making from. Anyway, my next question to Professor Vikrant. Please be quick. You talked very nicely about the culture of the various countries, Japan, Germany, US, they have got some sort of culture. What gives you the confidence, what culture we have as Indians, that we can really become Atmanirbhar? Quick one.
Of our country, I would say that we are emotional people. So Now, if we sit down on this path and just like during the pandemic, every phone call you make, you are bombarded with these messages about COVID. And then after a while, the whole country is aware that these are the things you have to do. In the same manner, if we can increase the outreach at different levels with regards to people setting up their own companies and then getting hands-on experience at different levels so that you can actually become a problem solver, then I feel that once you have a large number of people trying to do something, at least some of them will be successful. And
Okay.
moving forward,
Fine, cool. My next question to Shruti. Shruti, if we do not work in the direction of Atmanirbhar Bharata, we are going to kill the Indian industry. Today,
We lost your audio in the middle for some time. Can you repeat your question briefly?
can you hear me now?
Shruti, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, fine. I was asking, if we do not go for Atmanirbharta, we are going to kill our own Indian industry. Today, India's ISRO program is the best in the world. We beat even NASA in many aspects. Many, I don't say all aspects, but many aspects. Our Mangalyaan trip, our moon trip, they have been cheaper than them. So don't you think we should encourage Indian industry?
So what we're pushing for is not about not encouraging Indian industry, but rather we tell that there should be an organic push towards industries that are actually good at, like that India is actually good at. For example, if you're gonna force a change or like force a growth, that is not going to work, is something that we're telling from our case. Like for example, instead of doing everything and moving money from industries like to industries that generalize everything, we can just put it in like specific industries that we are good at. So that will increase like the production that India does, and also while facilitating imports and exports in other fields as well. So we think this will also improve the trade relations that we have with other countries when we're gonna like export the things that we are good at and import the things that we cannot locally produce. So this does not mean that we're like killing the local industries, but rather promoting the sector of the industries that India is actually good at doing.
Okay. My next question to Devika. Devika, do you agree there is a lot of anti-China sentiments all over the world today? And banning of those 59 apps of China, wasn't it a good step? It has given a boost to a lot number of IITians and other software engineers from India.
Sir, firstly, I agree that immediately post the pandemic, there was a wave of tensions towards China, right? But we think China has recovered greatly in this aspect as well because of how strong trade relations they had in the first place, and because other countries relied on Chinese products in itself, right? Which is why we think the way to reach this kind of leverage in the international relations is by doing what you're good at, by pushing what you're good at, and exporting more of what you're good at, so that you have the same kind of leverage that China had, which helped China survive. And you can see the numbers, right? Even though there was like a downfall immediately post the pandemic, it was able to survive simply because of this reason, which is what side opposition thinks is much better able. We are much better able to do.
Fine. My next question to Saibal. Saibal, you being the geologist, I just want to know, I was told that the coal which we were exporting, at the same time we were importing the coal which was suitable for the power stations which we had imported long time back from the other countries, and those power stations could not use our Indian coal because it was of a different variety. Is that correct?
There is a very strong point to it, and exactly what you said. This is a sector which was we took to the soft option. There are two types of coal: coking coal and non-coking coal. The coking coal is the one which the steel industry uses. The quality of the coal that we produce, the coking coal, is not enough to meet our requirements. That we have to import. That is there. But the non-coking variety, that is actually used by the sponge iron industry, and many other local industries actually use the cheaper form of coal. That is, more of that is required. Now, unfortunately, many of these industries actually have furnaces which actually are only designed to deal with coking coal, and those are imported. So this is where it comes in. What the government has now told is that this is the part that you've got to cut down. So we've got to design our own furnaces which can use the locally produced coal that we have, which is of inferior quality, but it's perfectly fine for using in the
Still you can manage. Still you can manage.
Etc.
So it is how now, Genia. My last question to you. Why we are not Atmanirbhar even after 72 years of independence, while many other small countries, they have done much better than us? What is lacking in us? What happened to us? In 72 years, we couldn't move, and now we are saying, hey, let's become Atmanirbhar. What was lacking in us?
Yeah, thank you, sir. But I don't think I completely agree with your proposition, because I think that Atmanirbharata is in our blood. Because being a student of history, I know that how, like, not only in 2020, but long back in 1905, between 1905 and 1911, Bengal actually kind of promoted and propagated this Swadeshi and boycott movement, right? And if you see that period between 1905 and 1911, all these several industries like textile, like pharmaceutical, like education, everywhere, Bengal and then, other parts of India, mainly Bengal, showed the self-reliance. For example, Jadavpur University, from where again I belong, is a product of, that particular period. So I don't believe with the idea that, we are not Atmanirbhar. What I think is that we have to, we have to become aware. We have to
go a long way.
We need to make
have to go a long way.
Engage, and then our country really can make a move. So all the potentials are there. The potentials needs to be inculcated, harnessed, and kind of nurtured in the best possible manner, and it is possible because this is the most opportune moment. This is what I feel personally.
Okay, thank you everybody for answering my questions. Thank you so much. Good.
Okay, and my sincere thanks to all the three jury members. And it's time for the judges to compile the scores and arrive at the two awards. One is the winning team, and the other is the best speaker. So we'll give them about 5 minutes. Please let us know whenever you are ready. And I would request one of the three judges to please come and announce the awards. Okay. And meanwhile, I would like to specially thank each one of you. I think this was a wonderful session. And I would request maybe the jury members to share their thoughts as to how they felt participating in this debate and their overall thoughts of this experience. Please unmute yourself.
Well, let me start since nobody's starting. Well, for me, it's a different flavor because I've been away for just over 4 years from the campus. I felt that I'm part of that campus, and it has been quite painful, I would say. I dearly miss the people, the campus, everything about it. And it's good to see some of the very, very warm, close friends on the screen still, even though it's virtual. So love the interaction. I think like Anandarup said, that we support as a debater. We say things that we are actually, as a person, as an individual, we don't believe in. But that's the process of the debate. So you could feel that some of the individuals are fighting tooth and nail against their personal, the cerebral processes happening. But that's the professionalism. I think all the individuals displayed that, and I loved it. Thank you so much. I pose my questions to my dear friends, my faculty colleagues, simply because I love you. No other reason.
Thank you, sir. I think Kaushik would remember when we were in college. I don't see that format anymore. There was a format in debate called turncoat, and where a participant had to speak if it's like 4 minutes given, 2 minutes for the topic and 2 minutes against the topic, and that really brought out the skills of the debater. It doesn't matter what you personally feel, but how convincingly can you argue for both sides of a motion. Okay, Kaushik, your thoughts on this event?
Anandarup, it was absolutely an honor to be a part of this. Thoroughly enjoyed the past 1 hour and a bit. It was a very contentious topic, and it lends itself to pretty strong arguments on both sides, as was pretty evident. What I particularly liked was that, the way the two teams approached it, each member of each side actually brought a completely different facet into the discussion, which was really nice. And particularly for people speaking for the motion, the three speakers approached it from three very, very different angles, which was really enriching. Loved it. The only comment I have is I think things have mellowed down a lot. This is one of the most gentle debates that I have ever seen. In my days, there'd be a lot more blood on the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. And it used to be Open IIT and Inter Hall, so so it was basically a fight amongst peers.
A lot more at stake.
Yeah. Commander VK Jaitley Saab, your thoughts?
Yeah, some observations. Though we are doing it online, it can't be that furious and full of fury as it is, in front of everybody. But some things we could have still done it. Like I see the three professors, for example, sitting together coolly on sofa. We could have made them stand on the rostrum. Hey, come on, guys, speak. So instead of just relaxing on the sofa, similarly, the students also from their home, they could have stood up, standing, and keep the camera in front of them. Like a proper debater, instead of sitting on the chair. That is the prerogative of the jury members and the judges only, not the debaters. So we could have brought some more action. Am I right, professors? Genia, is that okay? Vikrant, rostrum could have been provided to you, to stand and speak like a proper debater. And if the results are still not ready, let me share some few things of 79 era. One of the debater, a great debater, was Depriyo Guha in our batch. Abhinav Chakravarti, Bali. They are some of the great debaters. I was never a debater there, let me tell you. At least not for English, I was a little bit for the Hindi. And Depriyo Guha was one who could participate in that just a minute and speak for that 1 minute, not once, twice, a number of times, and nobody could object. He was such a great chap in jam. So he became, the so-called my opponent for the VP election. तो मैंने कहा गुरु ये तो बहुत ही जबरदस्त आदमी है, ये तो 100 बॉक्स में मेरी धज्जियां उड़ा देगा. But then he was too good a debater, there's no doubt, excellent. But when it came to actual soap boxes, yes, his English was much better than me. He could, speak beautiful English, correct English. My accent was, like Haryana ka Jat type. So, but then I found in the soap box, when things come from your heart, that has got much more impact. So one after the other soap boxes, the first one was with the foreign students. So there were hardly, I think, around 40 or 50 ke aspas. It went off very well. And then each hall, and then the last one used to be in the main building canteen, which I don't think there is any soap box there. So we used to have that, and then things moved on. So I think judges are probably ready.
Yeah.
So
I think Ninad is going to, I think the judges have decided amongst themselves and put the onus on the student representative, Ninad Lohakare, to announce the winners. Ninad?
Yeah. Thank you, Anandrup sir. So first of all, I would like to, really thank all the alumni present here, because like you guys are always an inspiration for us. Like whenever I meet you, it's always like, yes, this is something that I can, look forward to. Like this is my goal in life. It's always an inspiration for me. So thanks a lot. Jaitley sir, it's an honor to meet you, because like you are sort of a hero for us. Our director has always, honored you a lot. So it was a great experience. So coming to the results, the judges have decided that the scores are, the student team has got 335 points and the faculty team has got 338 points. So the winner is the faculty team. And
wow.
So round of applause, please.
And I think
tough competition, I would say. Very tough.
It was very tough. I it's a good name. And Shruti, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time the faculty team has won since this
Yes,
format
yes.
was introduced.
That's what I was going to say. The next thing. So yeah. Apart from that, the best speaker unanimously was Devika. So all the three judges, directly did not even compare the scores. We directly said that it will be Devika. So congrats, Devika. And yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for the opportunity as well.
The faculty team has won. I would like to make my remark. Judges know better than me, maybe. They did better in the rebuttal round.
Yes.
That's my observation.
If I may speak.
Sure.
For me, the faculty team actually excelled in the jury round. The jury round. The rebuttal round, I think it was neck to neck, in my opinion, of course. But in the jury round, they excelled.
Good. Unmute. Raj, unmute.
Yeah, if I may take a minute. In fact, you're very right, Dr. Chakravarti. I looked at my scores. It was both a bit of the rebuttal and a bit of the jury round where the faculty really scored a lot. And I think that was also because they brought the weight of their entire experience to the arguments, which the young students don't have. But I want to just say one thing, that to me, what was revealing was that listening to all 6 speakers, and we live in a time when you have to take a stand on every issue. You are being forced to say, I am this or I am that. But if you listen to all the 6, you can see that what the definition of Atmanirbhar is in between all the 6 speakers. So in the sense that is the middle space, which each one was contesting, each one was debating, but the real strength of their arguments was that each one brought to the table something, which I hope those in charge, and as Vikrant was saying, you are also a part of it, also listen to all the 6. So it is not that the students that the faculty has won the debate, so Atmanirbhar is the topic. It is the nuance which the students bring, it's the nuance which the faculty got. And I think a debate today, we have to celebrate a debate for the middle space, not the one on either side. And I think that was the strength of this, that all 6 speakers had done incredible homework. And I can understand how difficult it is at this time to do all that. And you created a middle space for us to learn from. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I would also like to thank the speakers, all the speakers, but it's the student speakers who brought life into this debate, the ferocity with which you people came out. I mean, it was awesome, to hear you itself was a pleasure. It's just that the richness of the experience, the richness of the conceptualization, that's what was on the side of the faculty, but you did excellently. This is not to say the student team has done bad or worse, but it was very close, in fact. So thank you very much.
Correct. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure now to bring this event to an end, but that wouldn't be possible without thanking a few people. The first person I would like to thank is Shruti. She was really the person behind this debate, even though I am...
Which Shruti?
Shruti from alumni office.
From the alumni cell.
Yes.
Shruti she is hiding behind the desk.
Shruti ke Okay, so she was really the person behind this debate. I am sitting here doing all the talking and being in the limelight, but she is the person who made this possible, everything possible. Next, of course, all the speakers, the jury members and the judges. I can't thank all of you enough because without you, this event would not have been possible. So you were the lifeblood of this event. The Office of Alumni Affairs, represented by Dean Subrata Chattopadhyay, Associate Dean S.K. Pal, and Senior Executive Officer Anirban Biswas, Professor Pal is here, and I would request Professor Pal to give the small tokens of appreciation to the faculty team. Students, unfortunately, you are not here. You would have also got that if you were here, but we would arrange for sending them over to you. And Devika, your prize for the best speaker is also here in front of me. We will somehow, Shruti will make sure that it reaches you on time.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
sir. Yeah.
Okay, there I think. All right, this is your prize. Something is inside, and I can tell you it is heavy, so you will get it.
Yeah, this is for the
This is for Devika, and so these are the prizes for the faculty team. Professor Shoibal Gupta, who also was felicitated today for completing 25 years of service at IIT Kharagpur. So, double congratulations to Shoibal Gupta. And finally, Vita. Okay. Last but not the least, I would like to thank a very important team, and especially in these pandemic times, and that is the team of the CE&T studio. They are the ones who has been tirelessly working behind the cameras and made this happen and made this so smooth, seamless, and happen seamlessly. So, really, Dada, thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, small
for me.
Appreciation for you.
Oh, I also get something. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask, who is going to thank Anandarup?
That's okay. Okay, thank you once again, everyone. It was a wonderful event, a pleasure to have all of you. Our next event for Foundation Day is actually at 6:30, and that's the launch of the Academy of Classical and Folk Arts. So if any of you are available, please try to log in. It's also going to be on YouTube Live, and the Academy is going to launch, followed by a leg dem by Pandit Ajay Chakraborty. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and good night.
Bye, everybody.
Great.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.